Hello there.
Hi, I'm Tiara from Chocolate Sushi Roll, and
I'm
I'm here with
Adam
Adam
from
Beck.
Bilingual. That's right. Go ahead,
And
Tiara.
today is our first bilingual kid talk, where we're going to talk about tips for success.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so I'm just going to introduce myself first and get to know a little bit about me. I'm a military wife, and so we move around a lot. I have two children. My oldest is a 5-year-old and a boy, a boy, and my daughter is 3.
Okay.
We are English speakers by trade. We come from America. I want to say America because Adam's fans are from all over the world. That's so exciting. And we just speak English. So, as a non native speaker, we are fluent in Japanese and we started Spanish this year. Yeah.
Okay. And you're close to Tokyo now. Is that
Oh,
right?
yes. And we currently live in Japan now. Yeah. And we're
Okay.
so excited about that.
This is your second time here, right? In Japan.
Yes. So, my oldest, Jason, was born in Okinawa, Japan. And
Okay.
from there, that sparked our love and interest to start learning Japanese. Then we had to go to America for 4 years, and now we're back in Japan. And Corona aside, we're so excited to be here and immerse ourselves in the culture.
Great. How much longer do you think you'll be here with your family?
Mm, we'll be here about 2 more years.
Okay. Okay. Well, that'll probably come up later when we talk about your story a little bit more, right? Because
Yeah,
your situation will change a lot when you go back because,
the
right? It was
minority language and the majority language flip flop
That's
a lot.
exactly, exactly. Okay, well, I'm Adam Beck, and I'm in Japan too. I'm in Hiroshima, Japan. We're very close to this place right here. And my family, I have a family of 4. My
Hmm.
wife is Japanese, and I have 2 children. They're a bit older now, but I do remember when they were younger monkeys. My daughter will turn 16 next month, and my son is 13. And yes, we live in Japan. I've been here for many years now. And um, so our majority language, of course, is Japanese. And
Hmm.
yes, our minority language is English.
How often
So
do you visit America?
uh, not very often at all. And it's been 4 or 5 years. So my kids have only been there 2 or 3 times, since, well, my daughter's almost 16. I think she's been there 3 times for maybe 2 weeks at a time. So, um, yeah, that's one of the circumstances working against us. And, it depends on the circumstances, how hard you need to work at this. Most of us do need to work at it pretty hard, but it also depends on our basic circumstances, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right, right. So let's see, we've kind of written things down so we don't get too far off
Exactly.
track.
Before we
Um,
left, you said your languages are the languages you speak.
right. Well, Japanese is the main language, of course, and my wife speaks Japanese to the kids, and I speak English to them. And they've also been learning Spanish for about 5 years and have made some progress in that language as well. But our main 2 languages are Japanese and English, right?
Okay, yeah. So, Adam, let's start. What would you say are your tips for bilingual success?
Okay, well, I was trying to think of a way, a concise way to be very concrete about offering some tips on this very first live chat. So I came up with 6 tips, actually just 6 words. Um, so I'd like to offer 6 words, okay? And the interesting thing is these 6 words, they all begin with the letter P. And maybe that will actually make it more memorable in some way, easier to remember. We'll see. Okay, let's begin with number 1. And number 1 is priority.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
so, in life in general, our actions are generally a reflection of our priorities, right? We
Mm-hmm.
do the thing that we want to do that are higher priorities. So I think when it comes to raising bilingual or multilingual children, the higher your priority, the stronger your actions will be.
That's
And as
right.
a result, the greater the progress you'll experience. Okay.
Hmm.
So I think that really is kind of the underlying theme
Exactly.
of every family. And I think the higher we can make our priority, we can make this a priority, I think potentially the more progress we can make because we'll simply be more active, we'll be thinking about it, and
Well,
we'll be acting, I think, in a more mindful and proactive way.
right. And I know some of us might already know about that prioritizing things in your life because it's kind of just like working out. You know, until you prioritize it and make it something that you do every day, that weight is going to still be there. So until you prioritize, you know, teaching your children, playing with them, making bilingualism a part of your life, it's not going to happen. So that's a good first tip. Yeah.
Absolutely. It really needs to be, again, it really depends on your circumstances as well. But when the
Hmm.
circumstances are working against you, against the target language, it's really important to put this at the center of your lifestyle, if you can, to the
Right.
extent
Exactly.
you can, right?
Okay.
Okay, and I already mentioned number two, but number two
Yeah.
actually proactive, being
Proactive.
proactive. And again, that means remaining mindful and proactive about your aim and making your best efforts each day, day after day, through the childhood years. And,
Okay.
this is a very long process. And, I don't think we're going to achieve our aims in 6 weeks. It really is such a long process that it's so important for us to be mindful and proactive day
Hmm.
after day and do our honest best. We can't do everything, and we're certainly we're not going to succeed at everything we try, but we keep going and we remain as, let's say, obsessive as
Exactly.
possible because,
I kind of feel that way a little bit.
we can be obsessive in a bad way. I get that, right? But I think it's important to try to be obsessive in a good way,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
We're working
Obsessive
at this day after
by
day.
prioritizing it. We're gonna link those two together. So far we
Absolutely.
have prioritize and proactive. All right. What's our
Right.
number three?
Number three is being persistent, which goes hand in hand with proactive. But we have to be persistent about our actions. If we're using the target language with our children or we're reading aloud to them, we really need to be as persistent as we can be about the actions that we feel are important to advancing our aim, right? And we continually trying, like I said, we're not always going to be successful. This is a process of trial and error to some extent, but we keep trying to strengthen our efforts to make them as effective and as enjoyable for our kids and for ourselves as we possibly can.
Okay, that's good. I like that. So we're on number four.
That's right. We're on number four. Number four is being patient. Okay.
Oh,
And this can be hard. This can be really hard, particularly in the beginning. All right. Because, when you have a first child and you don't really know what to expect, you can read a lot of books about this and everything. But I think one thing that new parents struggle with to a certain extent is, you know, you're going into this on faith to some extent because the small child is really not going to be, communicating with you until they're 2, 3, 4 years old. You really
exactly.
won't get in this kind of exchange with them for quite a while. But it's during that time, during these first few formative years, that you really need to provide as much input in the target language as you can. So you
Right.
need to be really
Their first
patient.
word doesn't just come from the air.
Exactly.
It came from somewhere. Yeah, that's right. It came from you
Right.
pouring, pouring, pouring into their cup. Yeah.
Absolutely. You got to fill up the cup while they're small, while they're not really interacting with you by being as talkative as you can, even if they're not responding yet. And also, reading aloud to them. I know you're going to talk about that, Tiara, but it's really important to be patient, right? At the same time, you're being persistent.
Mm-hmm.
Be patient, but if you do these actions, then your patience will pay off. Your
Exactly.
persistence will eventually pay off as the child gets older, right?
Exactly. So If you're just joining in, we got prioritize it, be proactive, be persistent, and then now we're going to add patience because especially with our little babies, they're just hopping around. You're like, are they even listening to me? What's the point? They're just cooing, they're not doing anything. But talk about your day, let it out, take that time, breathe, repeat. All right,
Absolutely.
so
The idea, let me just add, the idea for a baby, even if you don't think you're so talkative, it's really important to get into a habit of doing kind of a play
good
by
habit.
play of what you're doing or what you're experiencing around the child. Okay, I'm in the kitchen now, I'm making some food for you, and now I'm washing my hands. Look at how I'm washing my hands. Oh, the water feels so cool.
That's
You really
right.
do this play
Narrate your
by
day.
play, but yeah, it's the amount of input you're providing and speaking to the child is so, so, so important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's move on. I got 5 and 6 to go. Number 5 is to be playful.
Oh,
Another
yes.
P.
My
I like
favorite.
to say, and it sometimes sounds like a tricky thing to navigate, but what I say is that I think it's very important to be both very serious
Mm-hmm.
about our aim and at the same time very playful about our approach.
Okay.
Okay, so I know
Okay.
that's kind of a delicate balance, but if we can take this on as playfully as possible, then we will actually be more
Mm-hmm.
effective and it will be more enjoyable, both for our children who love playful activities
Exactly.
anyway. They want to engage with something, no matter what it is. If it's playful to them, they will engage
Exactly.
in
I
that
like to
activity.
say if they're laughing, they're learning.
Oh,
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah.
Right, right,
So,
exactly.
okay, to take what you said you have to have a serious intent, but be playful when you're actually delivering it. What I do is so playing can get boring real fast, right? Because we're adults and we don't want to eat the pretend food 20 times. I know. I don't want to play with Play Doh either. But what I will do is I'll write down an aim for that playtime. Like I want to go over maybe a grammar skill I was just learning. A good one is in Japanese they have tabesaseru. It's where you actually are feeding someone. It means you're putting it in their mouth. So it's a good one. I was like, okay, I need to practice this grammar because I just learned it in class or in my book, and oh, my child wants to play. Perfect. So we get the little baby doll, and baby doll neat, tabesaseru. And we're gonna put that on repeat because she wants to keep feeding the baby, or she wants to feed mama. So she can say mama ni tabesaseru, and we're playing and we're laughing, but we're serious about that grammar that I'm introducing today. And although she's not, she doesn't know. But to me, I'm getting practice. Yeah.
Of course, of course. But that example is perfect because you're able to engage her in a way that's playful for her. She doesn't care about learning the grammar, you care about that. But that
Exactly.
will happen if she's engaged in the activity, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
then it's about being very serious, but being as playful as you can so you can engage them in the target language. Um, and let me just add,
Okay.
playfulness is at the heart of the joyfulness of the whole experience.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, we can be successful, I suppose, if it's not that enjoyable for either the parent or the child. But if there isn't joy in this process, I think something's really, really missing.
Then you're not
And in
going to do it.
fact, if there's no joy, I don't think there's really a lot of success anyway.
Exactly. You're not going to do anything that doesn't bring you joy in the moment. And when I tell you, when your child speaks those first bilingual words, when I say joy, that's going to bring you some joy, okay? So
Absolutely.
stick with it because that feeling is like irreplaceable. You want to go for the next word. You're like, yes, all right, let me teach her something else. Let me say something else. It's
Right, right.
exciting.
Well, the next word then, you set me up for this, number
Oh,
6, is perseverance. And you said stick with it. And
okay.
when all is said and done, that is what it's about. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you have to persevere because as long as you keep going day after day throughout the childhood years, you
Right.
will succeed. You really cannot not succeed as long as you keep going. It
Mm-hmm.
may be true that you don't succeed to the extent that, you had original hopes for what your success would look like. But the fact remains that if you really continue day by day,
Mm-hmm.
step by step, and you just continue down the path, you and your child will experience a lot of rewarding progress together. You just
Mm-hmm.
can't give up. I mean, the only way to fail is to give up. I mean, that's the way to
Exactly.
fail. You
We
just
keep
have to
saying
keep
like
going.
even baby steps are steps toward the goal. So if you learn, even on your worst day, you're like, I only talk to my child for 30 minutes today in target language, or I only learned one new word today. Guess what? That's better than the zero a lot of people are doing, or better than the zero you could have done that day and not took any steps for it. So on days that I'm not speaking like my most Japanese or things like this, I just have to remind myself like I'm still moving forward in English, which right now English is our minority language. Weird, I know. But we're still taking steps in English, and we did engage in some type of Japanese today. We watched TV, we listened to music, we danced in it, we did something with it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
every
Every
day.
little bit counts. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why every day is important.
It
I
is.
don't want people to kick themselves if they have a bad day, because you always have another day. This is a
You do.
marathon, it's not a sprint. You just
Exactly.
keep going step by step. It probably takes 10 million tiny steps, but if you take those tiny steps day after day, you and your child will go a long, long way together on this bilingual or multilingual journey.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me just round it up and then we'll move to your tips, Tiara. So, number one was priority. Number two was being proactive. Number three was being persistent. Number four is being patient. It's sometimes hard to do for me too.
Just
Number
take that
five
deep
is
breath.
being playful. And number six is perseverance.
Perseverance.
Okay.
I really
So
love those
let's
six
leave it at that
tips.
for the moment.
I don't know
Okay.
how I can top that.
You don't
Adam,
need
thank
it at
you.
all. You
Sharing
have
your
your own
wealth of
perspective.
information here. Yes.
Well, tell us from your perspective, TR, what are some of the important things, the important tips for your own success?
Yes. Okay. So I rounded mine out to my top three because
Okay.
we want to get to some questions from you all. As a non-native speaker, my biggest obstacle to overcome is not having the answers. And how I kind of reconciled that within myself was, as the kids get older, I might not even have all the answers in English. But guess what? I'm not a native speaker of English. I'm not fluent in English. So why should I, kind of get down on myself for not knowing the words in Spanish or not knowing the words in Japanese,
Right.
especially in 2020? Okay, there are books. We got smartphones in attached to our hand at every moment. So go ahead and download right when y'all finish this live. Download your dictionary app for your language of choice, and when your child doesn't know a word, boom, you got it. You have that word. Okay, so my first tip is reading. Reading. Okay, so we read every day, two times, two books in the morning and two books before bed, and that's the minimum. Okay, so I might sneak one in before nap time or another point in the day, but in our daily routine, no matter what, when you wake up, we're reading two books, and when you go before you go to bed, we're reading two books. Right?
Right. Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
These
go ahead.
routines, right? These important, productive routines,
Mm-hmm.
trying to offer as much input as we can through speaking and through reading. Absolutely.
Right. So routines are really important with toddlers, with any age, but especially with toddlers and little kids. And I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. So if I don't read the book, Mama, we didn't read a book today. Are we gonna read it? And there are some days where they might not feel like it, or they're super energized and they're running around, and that's fine because they are listening. Kids are always listening. Because when you went to your cousin's house, they was telling all your business. They was listening when you was on the phone. So, yeah, they was listening. So they
Okay.
are listening when you're reading that story. If there's no TV on, there's nothing else going on in the room, and they're playing with their car or doing something else, they're still listening. So keep reading that book, and if nothing else fails, that still helps you, um, your reading practice for today. So you can't lose during this time.
Right,
Another
right,
thing I wanted
right.
to add with the reading is I really encourage books and having books and getting them from the library is so important because I just leave them in the room of wherever it's situational. So in the toilet, I brought these two to show you guys. We have toilet books. Says Unti
Okay,
de
okay.
Kana, can you poop? And we have toothbrushing books in there. And when I can't think of the word and I don't have it, I'm gonna read it right here. Like, what did his
Right,
mama say to him? And I'm gonna say it to them. Okay,
right.
so that's a real good cheat from non-native speaker.
It's great.
Um,
Great.
my this go rolls right into my second tip is
Okay.
labels. Labels. I brought a few. Okay, so
Okay.
I write my labels. This one says, "Let's brush our teeth. Don't make a mess. Sorry, I forgot. Come here
These are
now."
your
Just
Spanish labels, right?
yeah, these are in Spanish because I know all this in Japanese. So now
Okay,
we're doing it in Spanish. My kids
fantastic.
know we say the same thing every day to our kids. Going back to routine. When you break it down, you say the same thing over and over. Your kid knows what they're supposed to be doing before you even say it. Okay? So they already know it in English. So why can't you say it in Spanish? Why can't you say it in German? Why can't you say it whatever your target language is? Hmm?
Mhm.
I'm too busy. Okay. That's where your labels come in. You put that label up by the door that says, "Do you have your book bag?" Put the label by the shoes that says, "Put your shoes on." Put the label by the sink that says, "Take your medicine, brush your teeth." And when I walk into the bathroom, I'm not remembering because I can barely remember Olivia, Jason, come on. I got a lot going on, but I can look at the wall and I can read. They don't know
Right,
you're reading. They just know at the appropriate time that you said what they need to hear when they grab the toothbrush. You said,
right.
"Cepillate los dientes." And I did this. And you can say it in both languages. They don't get confused. They are smart. Do not underestimate the brain of the children. They are smart. So I say, brush your teeth, cepillate los dientes, hamigaki. They can boom, boom, boom. They understood what I said in all three. So labels.
And labels actually can be useful as a literacy tool
Mm,
eventually as well, right?
right.
Because, yeah, I mean, it gets into a different subject, captive reading, which we may talk about later, or maybe in
Yes, that's a
another.
good tangent. Captive reading. I will
Okay,
tangent that one for you, Adam. I read
okay,
his
go.
book. If you guys don't have it, his book is great. Um, captive reading is when, okay, you want to tell them what captive reading is?
Okay, okay, captive reading. Let me set this up because it really
Go.
started, very early on when my kids were very small, even before they began reading. Because what I noticed, as my kids were, uh, from the time they were small, I was very, very mindful about, my environment and how can I bring things in to work effectively with my kids, right? And so I was in a public bathroom one day, and you go into, I don't know what the women's room is like, but the men's room has advertisements everywhere because it's a captive location. You're either sitting down or standing up, and there's
That's
something
so a
right in front of
Japanese
you.
thing. That
Okay.
like they
So
put them in the bathrooms at home. I had to get used to that. Yeah.
So, it dawned on me, this is a captive location. I'll do the same thing with my kids. And they were
Mm.
on the verge of reading at that point. So, from the time they were about probably about 3 years old, up until now, where my daughter is almost 16, I've been doing this thing called captive reading in addition to everything else. This is kind of a sidebar,
Right.
but I put things on the wall of the bathroom every 3 days. Let's say I change it out and I put something else in there. And over the years, I've done a variety of different sorts of tactics with this strategy, different ways of putting text on the wall, starting when they were 3, something appropriate for that, until
Right.
now where I put newspaper articles on the wall. But my point is this, is that, yeah, it takes a little bit to prepare and to
Mm-hmm.
maintain over time.
Mm-hmm.
I've done many different ideas, as I said, and you can go to Bilingual Monkeys and search for captive reading, and it'll
Okay.
bring up
Yeah.
all
He
the
talks
different
about
things
like
I've been doing
riddles
over
and things
the
like
years.
that. Yeah.
And it is in the book as well. I talk about the different ideas for this. But it's a way that you don't actually have to be present to provide
Mm.
additional input over and over and over throughout the years in a
Yes.
really engaging way. So it's really been an important part of our experience. And I recommend this very highly to other families as
Right.
well. Maybe, Tiara, you could talk about
Yes,
this
I'm gonna
from your
recap
perspective.
in layman's term, and that takes me into my last tip. But in layman's term, captive reading is when you're driving and you're not looking, but you saw the sign that said Chick-fil-A was to the left. It's like you still read it, even though you didn't intentionally tell your brain to read it, right? You're on auto drive, but you saw that Tiffany's shirt today said something funny, a clever idiom, but you didn't tell yourself to read Tiffany's shirt, right? When you went to work. So that's captive reading. Like that your mind is still reading and observing the room around you, even though you're not physically saying, let's read this book. Okay. Going on from
Absolutely.
that.
Because
Good.
sorry, let me just add one thing is that you're absolutely right, because by the time a child begins to read, they cannot not read when you put something in front of them. It's just like
Yes.
as grown-ups, as
Yes.
adults, we're the same way because
Yes.
we automatically read.
That
So as a
nosiness
child
kicks in. I can
read,
do it now.
I,
Let me see
take
what's
advantage
captain
of
said.
that automatic reading response. Okay, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay,
Loving
okay.
it. So my last tip, because I really want to get to your questions, is goes right into that captive reading. He said that he changes it out every 3 or 5 days, and that might take a little bit of effort on your end. And I want to say that for anybody, non-native or not, one good day. Because a lot of people they say, I want to do it, but I don't have time, or I can't commit to something new, or this and that. I get all the excuses in the world you guys can imagine. So I'm gonna say, if you could give me one good day where you are happy, your kids are in a good mood, you're in a good mood, you're like, I'm feeling kind of good today. You just woke up happy. On this one day, boom, where my labels go. Write your labels for the week. Write your 1, 2, 3 phrases. Doesn't have to be a lot. Just give me 3. Then I have my little agenda book. And on my agenda, I write down, it looks like a lot, but that's only because we are doing multiple languages. So this one's for Japanese, this one's for Spanish, and this is not for the day, mind you. I wrote it in this day, but this is for the week and sometimes for 2 weeks. If I don't get to it, this travels over to next week, and you see next week I didn't write anything because we're gonna revisit the same thing. So on this one good day, I picked 2 grammar topics. I picked 2 kitty vocabularies, because Olivia is 3, and I picked some phrases for Jason to use. Like right now, we're playing board games, so kind of like "don't be a sore loser" in Japanese. Like how can you express that? Because he's gonna have to go to school and play board games and things with his friends. So think about what's
Right,
relevant in their life right now. So don't talk about the
right.
airport. They ain't going to no airport. It's coronavirus. They don't care. Don't do the airport. Skip that. When you study from the mindset of your child. What is relevant to them right now? What is going on in their life? If they like video games, okay, let's get some video game vocabulary going on. If they like fire trucks, let's do fire trucks. On this one good day, we still on the same day. That's what we're gonna do. And if you need some more vocabulary, I like to use our books. It's exactly what we do in English. This book is called Whose Toes Are Those? That's a that's a proper English sentence. Yes, write that on the label. Write that down. And all week ask, whose toes are those? Substitute toes. Whose eyes are those? Whose ears are those? And you got your lesson for the week. That's it. Just go with that all week. So that's actually what we're doing this week. In Spanish, we've been doing ¿Dónde está? ¿Dónde es mi mamá? ¿Dónde es mi papa? ¿Dónde es? And just change the last word. This one is where's my belly button for this particular book. But like I said, these children's books. That's a complete Spanish sentence, and now we're saying it all week. Okay, so take a line from a book, take
Right.
different lines, and make your labels from those lines from the book. And on that one good day, we're going to introduce it to our kids. We're going to play hide and seek. And we're going to say, "Donde es mi mama?" while we're playing hide and seek. We're going to really make sure they understand that this week, "Donde estás" means where is something. And and then after that,
Okay.
the rest of the week, you can not worry about it. Don't study. Don't pick up another language book. Don't worry about it. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to read this book all week. And you're going to play hide and seek again, where you say, "Donde estás?" You're going to hide objects, hide a bowl. Where's your bowl for dinner time? You made the food. They're happy about the food. Put it under a towel. Ah, ¿dónde estás mi comida? Oh, where's your food, baby? Where's your food? And it's right there in your hand, but they like to play. Like he said, make it joyful, make it fun. They like to play. And you're reiterating that
Right.
same one sentence, ¿Dónde está? And that's how you move up. And the next week you do one more, you do one more, and you I really like a subscription just because it can grow with you. But for instance, we've had the Shimajiro subscription, and so we started with like it's hard to see, but we started with like small words. This one's Olivia's for age 3, and then we moved up. So now that we're more fluent in Japanese, we're now doing this for Jason about clouds and things. And so make
Okay.
sure that you're upgrading your levels as you get better, upgrading those books as you get better. But start at a level that you can handle. So in
Right.
Spanish, we're right here. One sentence. All right, that's my last tip.
Right. Right. Let me just, oh, that's great. Let me just underline kind of what you're saying too, because you touched on two important things. The idea of resources. You said you had a subscription and you have resources, coming into the house regularly. And I can't stress that enough. Resources starts with an R, so it doesn't really fit in with the P. It's really, really important that we continually be on the lookout for resources that are suitable for our kids, for their language level, for their level of maturity, and for their interests, right? So resources is a key thing because the more you have and the more appealing they are, the more you'll engage together in that language. And the other thing, you talk about one good day, but sustainability is really, really, really important. This goes back to perseverance, right? If your routines are not sustainable in some way, it's so much harder to keep going. So, be kind to yourself. Do what you're able to do,
Mm-hmm.
day by day, and don't try to do too much at any
Don't try
one
to do
time
too
because,
much. Mm-hmm.
if you're trying to do too much, that's when it can become difficult to continue this effort because again
Exactly.
it's a marathon. You
Well,
have
there's
to
kind of
be
like a
able to.
snowball effect too. When you're in the beginning, it's a little hard to get the snowball rolling. Just like I said earlier, weight loss. It's a little hard, but if you push for that first week, you push for that first month, and you get into those routines, and your kids understand those routines, then it's gonna roll. So the same, you're starting with one sentence, and it seems like
Right.
this is not enough. Why am I even bothering? But that one sentence is gonna
Right.
turn into two because next month now you have about 3 sentences you guys are doing. You're doing five, and you're snowballing. And next thing you know, you're doing
Right.
paragraphs. Okay, so take it slow and enjoy the
Right.
process. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great, TR. Thank you. That was
Yes.
the great tips from
It's
your
exciting.
perspective, which I think is a very valuable perspective. So yeah, let's look at some of the comments. Any questions or comments
Yeah, if you
from
guys
people out
want to
there?
ask questions, we can say hi to people. Can you see the comments? You can stroll up, and if you know anybody
Oh,
or want to say
okay. I'm
hi.
going to try to do this without like blowing up my computer.
Yes.
Uh, okay,
We
I'm
have
having trouble.
Alana from Germany. Oh, in
Oh, no.
Paris. Lived in Paris. Hmm.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yes. We got language learning lover from Alabama. Hey, girl.
Well, there's a question for you, Tiara. How about that one? What
Yes.
is the very first step a monolingual parent should take once they decide they want their children to learn a language? What's the
Mm.
first step? What do you think?
The very, very first step would be resources. We're gonna go back to resources because without them, where are you gonna go? And I really want to make a video next week about, like, on my own channel on Chocolate Sushi Roll, about where to find resources, because right now moving into Spanish, that's my big thing. So I had to search and search for Japanese resources when we lived in America, and I was lucky enough to find Shimajiro Kodomo Challenge, and that's the subscription with the books and the toys. I love that. And then for something in Spanish, I thought would be easier since it's a lot in Spanish. But the problem is they've flooded the market with like cheesy things. They kind of like watered it down. So you have
Okay.
to fight through that to find a resource that fits your family, your budget, what you can do. Because maybe you can't hire a nanny that speaks only Spanish, or maybe you can. And that would be excellent. That would be like the ultimate first choice, but I can't. I would love to have somebody come in 2 to 3 times a week. I did find, I'll give them a little shout out, talkbox.mom, and they have Use Spanish at Home, and it has just mama phrases in it, and that's it. And they also have Japanese as well. So, I love that because when I was starting to learn Japanese, I was like, I don't want to know about the trains, and I don't want to know what, you know, how the beginning of a textbook works. I don't want to know about that. I want to know, sit down, stop, go wash your hands. So that was good. So resources. After resources, make the labels from the resources.
Right,
All right.
right,
Good
right.
question. Thank you.
Yeah, because resources, again, it comes back to exposure, input, and
Right. What do we have
you know, the
here?
two, there are two
Lulia.
really main
Sorry if
things.
I'm murdering her name, but we have
What's
another
that?
question. You're
Okay, I'll come
working
back to the
on,
top.
yeah,
Go
you're
ahead.
working on 3 languages with your kids just by yourself alone. I remember Adam once suggested that you better have at least 20 hours exposure for the target language. So how do you schedule your hours of the week or hours of the day for all 3 languages? Yes, I read when Adam said that. I know. Um, yes, I'm gonna say I love my husband. This is not a kill to my husband, but he's military, so I cannot depend on him for my language input because they get deployed for 3 months, 6 months. He might be here and he might be gone next week for 2 weeks. You know, so I do not want to put like one parent, one language doesn't work in our household. That's all I'm gonna say. So I say if I want them to get it, I want it to come from me. So I need to schedule the time where I know I can be consistent. That makes sense. So with that being said, although that helps a lot when he's here. Okay. So I do during the weekday when there was school. Jason goes to Japanese school now from 8:30 to 2, and I pick him up, and then we continue Japanese until 5. When dad comes home, and when dad comes home from work, we try to switch to a more English base. Um, and encourage the children to swap to English for dad. And we're like, oh, dad needs to understand, so let's start speaking in English, and do English until 7. And then at 7 o'clock, we've been doing Spanish just from 7 to 8, that right before bedtime hour, because we're still in the part where we're introducing Spanish. And I think this is a part a lot of people skip. So I want to go back to the other question. The first step, too, is listening. Just listen, because every language has a rhythm, and if you skip over learning that rhythm and the kids learning that rhythm, then I think it would be uncomfortable to begin. So we're just dancing to Spanish music. We're listening to the ABCs. I know you might have seen on my Instagram the kids talking in Spanish. And so we're just using that hour to kind of, and now it's bled over now in the daytime because Corona, there's no school. So we've been doing an hour of Spanish playtime and dance time in the daytime as well. Our house is majorly Japanese, so we speak Japanese all day, and then English when dad comes home, and then Spanish 2 hours. So
Yeah,
that's how
I
you
think it also goes to the idea that there are different expectations for different languages. You know, I
okay.
mentioned before that Spanish is our third language as well, but I don't have the same expectations. So when it comes to exposure, 20 hours, 25 hours, this
Hmm.
sort of idea of ample exposure, um, it depends on your expectations for, the results that you're seeking. For
Exactly.
English, from the very beginning, I was really trying to provide as much ample exposure to English as possible, right? Because that was particularly important to me, that language. I wasn't worried about Japanese as much, right? We're here in Japan and their mother is Japanese.
Right.
Um, so then Spanish on the other side of that is, they have that far less, twice a month, we have a Spanish teacher coming to our house to give them lessons. We do homework, not every day, but, we have a textbook we're kind of working through. I don't really have much Spanish ability, so I can't be that helpful in terms of providing input. But my
Okay.
point is, I don't have the
Adam.
same expectations about Spanish. I'm willing
Mhm.
for that to simmer more slowly and grow over time to the point where they'll be ready, I think, because they do have a passive knowledge now,
Mhm.
where when they're older and they have more opportunity, I think it can take off.
Yeah, that's true. Me too. Japanese and English are our first languages, and I expect full fluency. And Spanish is our second language, and I like that idea as well. First, two first languages, and then our second language. All right, we got a question for Adam from Ashton. She
Okay,
said, "Hey, from Mississippi, you were talking about the importance of resources. What about a situation where there
okay.
are few resources for the target language, especially for kids?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
Corona is not.
challenging.
Corona is
You
killing
know,
play
I,
dates.
I'm I'm working on a new book now about other families and their stories. The first book I wrote was really about my experience as a teacher and a parent, and offering more general principles based on my own experience. Uh, but because of my experience at the blog and at the forum in particular, I've been able to meet so many interesting families who have really encouraging stories, I think, to share. And so I was in Europe last fall, and I spent time with many families. I had little homestays. It was really a really wonderful experience, both personally and professionally. But one family, they live in Denmark, and the mother is from Mongolia originally. And, that's a less common language. And so I've been working on this book, and I was working on her story just last week or 2 weeks ago. And this really gets into the heart of their challenge, because they have had to be as proactive as possible about trying to bring resources into their home, through trips that they take and bringing an extra suitcase and filling up with books, you
Mm,
know? And they've been able to find, because of modern technology now, 10 or 20, 30 years ago, it would be very difficult in some ways, but they've been able to hook up Mongolian children's TV programming, even
mhm.
though they're in Denmark. They're able to get some shows for their kids to watch. So
Right.
they have been very persistent. It goes back to that, proactive and
So,
persistent. But even though there are shortcomings in terms of their resources,
mhm.
because their language is not English, it's not Spanish, it's not Chinese, it's not the sort of more widespread language where they can find resources more easily. They have
Right.
to be particularly proactive and persistent about resources for their kids.
Mhm.
So it's hard, there's no way
It's
around
it
that.
is.
I think it's always hard. It's easy for me to say, if my target language is English, but yet I still have to be and have had to be persistent throughout, so I can choose resources that will suit our situation and my kids.
Right.
It's harder still with a less common language, but the only way to proceed and to get the resources that will be effective and enjoyable for your kids is to keep at it and do the best you can.
Right.
And if you can't figure it out today or find the resources you wanted today, try again tomorrow. You
So
just
she
have to
said,
keep going.
continuing from
And
the previous question, what should
yeah,
I be doing well in advance? Could that situation be changed? It's a ton of work, obviously. Yeah,
and the
it is.
situation,
I think you might have touched on that when you talked about trying to travel to that country and get the resources yourself is the number one. Or if you have a friend, or you can find a connect like through the internet, italki or one of these sites, find somebody that can maybe ship you some books that you can trust enough to ship you some.
right,
And
Ashton, I don't know the specifics of the situation, but
yeah,
the idea of travel, and I know this is an impossibility at the
and
moment,
no, oh
but
yeah,
when it becomes more possible, that is such an empowering experience for children to be immersed in the target language
Ah, okay.
environment, the
This is a
minority
good
language
question.
environment.
We have
But
Jordan
even,
from,
let me just
oh,
add
go
a
ahead.
few things, sorry, but even at a distance, what can happen now because of online opportunities, go to a place like italki.com where you could actually connect yourself and your kids with a speaker of your target language.
Yes,
There are many possibilities to even connect with people online for these languages and
yes.
these sorts of resources. You just have to keep
More are
looking.
popping up because I know we keep saying, you know, downplaying Corona, but more online resources are popping up for the children's classes and learning classes are on sale right now and things like this. So I've actually been considering looking one up for the kids since they're on sale and everything right now. Okay, we
Right.
have a question from Jordan from Australia. Hey,
Okay.
what can we do if the other partner is not willing to cooperate in raising bilingual children?
This is a good question
Mm-hmm.
too. It's a hard question. I think there needs to be a distinction though about what does it mean in terms of support or lack of support. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's some cases where the parent, it's usually, of course, the majority language parent who maybe doesn't have ability in the minority language and isn't necessarily interested in learning that
Or I
language,
found
even
the
a little bit
opposite
of
too.
it.
The
But
minority language parents not giving the sharing that minority language with the kids, and the majority language
okay,
parent
yes, that
wants
happens as well.
that minority language to be shared. Yeah.
Right, right. So it
Mm.
really depends on the particular, variables. But there's a difference between moral support, where I'm willing, let's say that I don't have ability in that language and I can't really, practically speaking, do a lot to support it, but I can be morally supportive behind my spouse's, my partner's efforts, right?
Yes.
So there's some moral support there, at least that. But then there's the other side where a parent, let's say, um, feels uncomfortable and unhappy if they don't understand that target language, and that can create more difficulties within the family. And at
Mm.
that point, I really think a family conversation is needed, and the parent of the target language really needs to share their honest feelings about why that is so important to them,
Yes.
and do whatever they can to bring the parent on board, at least to be
I like
more,
that.
to
Mm.
be a source of moral support, if not,
Yeah.
practically
Maybe they
active.
didn't know why it was so important to you. And if you explain that to them, education is knowledge. If you can explain to them and show them statistics about bilingual children and things like that, then maybe they will jump on board. I'm going to let Adam, that was a very nice answer from Adam. So I'm going to take it and spin it. I'm with language learning lover. She says, my husband doesn't speak Spanish and isn't interested in learning, and I'm willing to do it myself. And that's where I am, like as a
Okay.
non-native. My husband isn't interested in learning Spanish or Japanese. I am very grateful that he's very supportive. If I ask him to read the Spanish book with my kids, he will struggle through it and read it. He's very supportive. He will buy us all the materials, what we need. He always supports the kids. But at the end of the day, he's like, I don't want to learn another language. And that's fine. I'm not going to push that on him. That's not his thing, you know? So what you can do is you can run this show by yourself. Okay? One person can steer a car. So we can refer to the beginning of the put him in the passenger seat, boo. Put him in the back seat if you have to. But we gonna do this. So
Right.
do what you gotta do. Unless, like I said, we cause no marital problems. If he's like a test against you learning a language, okay, that's something different. But he just doesn't want to participate. He wants no parts of it. Okay, that's fine. Do it while you're at work. Or, honey, you can go to another room. We're going to do Spanish time right now. So work out something within your home. But as for me and my kids, we will be trilingual. All right. So our next question, she says, we have a speaker says, children in our school keep answering in French, even if we, the teachers, speak Slavic to them all year long. What to do? How can we switch their French to Slavic?
I'm not sure I know the circumstances well enough. Let's see.
Mm,
Children.
but I get that. You see it? It's toward the
Okay, how can
bottom,
we
fourth
switch their
four up.
French to Slovak? I'm guessing this
Slovak.
is
Sorry,
in
y'all.
France, and this is a a Slovak Saturday school or something like this. I mean,
Oh,
the
that's
conditions
important
are
to know how
important
many
in terms of,
hours.
sorry.
I said that's important to know how many hours the kids are at this school are
Yeah,
exposed
my
to.
guess is that if this is in France, for example, that there are many cases, right, where
Right,
the children, the families are in a majority language country, and that's the language that is really their stronger language.
right.
And it can be difficult for them to switch to that target language, even on a kind of a Saturday basis,
Hmm.
right? So it goes back to input, it goes back to exposure. And if they haven't had enough exposure in their general life, then that can be a challenge. But I would suggest that in a situation like that, they need more controlled practice that's engaging for them.
Hmm.
So if they can't really respond, more freely with the target language, then there needs to be a way to practice with them in a more controlled way by offering uh, language structures that you're using for particular games, let's say, that they would repeat to be able to play the game, to be able to
Hmm.
engage in that
Hmm.
activity. And if they don't use the language, then they're not able to engage effectively in the activity. You see
Yeah.
where I'm kind
If
of
you're
going
still
with
with
that?
us, if you can give us some more insight on that, that would be great. Like what ages are we talking about? Because with my kids,
Right,
if
right.
you're offering them something and they can't, like you said, if they can't get it until they say it in the other language, and not being mean, but like always in a fun way, like you said, we're gonna pass the ball, but we're only passing it to someone that said, me in the other language, or it's my turn in the other language, then okay, you get it. Something like this where it's fun, but it encourages. But I need to know an age because that's not going to work on the teen group, but it will work on the 5-year-olds kind of thing. So yeah, if you're still in the
Right.
comments, like
Right.
give us some more information and we can see if we can help you through this. Yeah.
But in general, this is true of a family as well. So it's not just a school setting, but
Mm,
if the child is not really responding, or they're responding in the wrong language, they're not responding in the language that you would really like them to respond in, what do you
mm,
do? Well, there needs to be a way to find opportunities for them to
right.
engage with the language that they're capable
That
of
need
using,
you
even
talk
if you're
about a lot.
feeding them that language to engage with you, right? So
Right.
you have to create more framework or more structure for them to be able to use the language.
Yeah, we have a good comment. Maybe implementing some sort of reward system or competition would encourage them to respond in Slavic. Yeah, thank you, language
That can
learning
work
lover.
too. It really, a lot of
Exactly.
this is situational to some extent. It depends on the
It
circumstances.
does. But I think you
Um,
said in your book, need. What this all boils down to, whatever the circumstances, whatever it is need. Is there somewhere in that school where there's a person that doesn't speak French? Or I don't know if that ship has sailed already, but if you guys can present yourselves as not being able to comprehend French, I don't know French, then what are they going to do? So that kind of like a way that you can make the need more prevalent would be really good.
right. Yeah, that brings
Okay.
me back. I
He
had
answered the
mentioned
question, Adam.
before, let me just add a point.
Okay.
Yeah, but these two ideas that children need ample exposure to the language and
Hmm.
they need an organic need to use it. The second one isn't always true. It depends on the circumstances. But these two things, it really, if there is any sort of equation to this, it would be exposure plus need equals active bilingual ability. So always go back to those two things and ask yourself, does this child is this child receiving ample exposure to the
Hmm.
language, enough exposure to the language compared to the majority language? And does this child feel a genuine need to use this language? And
Uh-huh.
what can I do if there are shortcomings, what can I do or what can we do to address those shortcomings to
Hmm.
fortify them? And if you can fortify those shortcomings and make those two things stronger, exposure and need, then you will see more progress.
Hmm. Exactly. I agree. Totally. And follow their interests. She said their ages 3 to 11 and they come from French Slavic families. At 3 to 11, yeah,
Right,
following
right,
their
right.
interests is going to, for me, like I changed my kids. I know you're at the school, but at home life, encouraging the parents to keep up what you're practicing in the school then if the parents both speak. all speak both languages. I changed all my kids' electronics to Japanese, so it's something fun they want to do, and then they have to engage with in Japanese to do it. Just little things I think add up as well.
Absolutely. Follow the child's interests, whether it's within the family or within a school setting. Really follow those interests, ignite the language through their interests in a more structured way if they're not capable yet of using it more freely
Yeah,
through games and enjoyable activities. So, Tiara, we're almost at 1 hour.
we
What do you
are. We
think?
can wrap up. I think we got everyone's questions actually too.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
great.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to today?
Um, I just end with surround yourself with like-minded community. Like-minded people have a community is so important. Language learning lover in the comments, she's part of my community. We're both raising bilingual children. We just met online, but just meeting people online that have similar interests, like just like what you're doing today. um, in this chat with us, and just knowing that other people are out here having the same struggles as you, or having the same achievements as you, will help you. Like tomorrow you wake up, or even some of you are starting your day, you'll be like, you feel a little extra gust of something, instead of like the one listener that had an unsupportive husband, or not helping, or not contributing. Then it's kind of bringing you down a little bit, right? It's like, I keep pushing for this, I keep pushing for this, but nobody around me is pushing for this too. So why am I? And so when you join these chats, or you talk to other people, or you get a community, then you always have that this is why, with supporting you, pushing you, holding you back when you are going down. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I encourage anyone, to stop by my blog, Bilingual Monkeys, or
Yeah.
my very lively supportive forum, the Bilingual Zoo, because, that's what this work for me is all about. It's about supporting other parents, other teachers
Mm-hmm.
on this journey. So please feel free to take advantage of that. And let me just, I'll kind of finish my own
Adam's Bilingual
chat
Monkey
today.
blog.
Keep at it, just keep going. You need support, reach out. People are there for you to support you through this, through the times that you feel discouraged about your progress. But you can keep going for another day. So you can do it, and we're cheering for you. And one last P word, actually,
Oh.
pudding. Let me just say pudding, and because preferably butterscotch, but pudding is sweet. So, I know this seems so random, but you got to keep this experience sweet for your kids. Kids want pudding, and they will want the target language too, if you make it a sweet experience for them. Okay. So
Right.
keep it sweet and keep going. It was great to have everybody here for the first live chat.
Yeah.
So I'll turn it back to you. Close it out, Tiara.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to show everybody, if you want, you can follow me on my Instagram, Chocolate Sushi Roll. I just post about our day-to-day life in Japanese, and in Japan, living in Japan while we are here. And also, I started a new weekly series of Be Trilingual with Us. So every week, I will post like one phrase of the week, or one thing that we're learning. So far, we're on alphabet, numbers, and next week's going to be colors, and then we'll get into phrases. And then this is Adam's website. Um, he talked a little bit about what you can see. You want to tell him what's on your
I
website?
can't see it on my computer, but
It's there.
what are you showing?
Your new book in your website, your front page.
Okay, okay. Yeah, but again, Bilingual Monkeys, stop by, come to the Bilingual Zoo. It's a free forum, and we have many, many members from all over the world who are extremely supportive. So I really recommend that, take advantage of these resources. I do have a couple books, Maximize Your Child's Bilingual Ability, and also I Want to Be Bilingual, and maybe those books can be of support to you as well. So again,
Exactly. And hit
keep
that
going,
subscribe
and I hope
button.
we'll have a
Subscribe,
chance
subscribe,
to talk again.
subscribe. All right.
Thank you. And
Bye.
Tiara, thank you, and thank your husband too. All
Yes.
right.
Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye, everybody. See you again. All right. Bye for now.